Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Monday, February 9th, 2026, and today we're talking spinach from seed to table and taking a quick question about grants for market gardeners, possibly to grow spinach. How about that pairing? So let's do it. All right, friends, happy Monday to you all. I hope everyone is doing well and feeling well and all those good things. Maybe a few of you, inspired by Thursday's episode, picked up some yoga or an exercise routine over the weekend. Good on you. You will not regret that come summer or old age, I guess. I am sure at least a few of you watched some Olympics this weekend. I love the Olympics. Doesn't matter the sport. A new event will come on, and by the end of it, I'm watching Czechia and Norway duke it out in a 12-lap, like speed skating event or something, and I'm as invested in that as anything I've ever been invested in. I absolutely love it. Also, shouts to Bad Bunny for bringing some agriculture into the Super Bowl halftime show last night. I mean, it was almost jarring to see a farm on that stage. It was one of those moments where you sort of realize how rarely agriculture ever features in popular culture, or just like culture in general. The food we eat and the people who grow it, they rarely get that level of exposure, and I love that. Honestly, it was like kind of one of my favorite halftime shows of all time. I mean, I love me some plants. And I will be bringing some agriculture into this show presently, but important note first, we have a job this weekend, all of us. So the Cornell Lab of Ornithology reached out and asked if we could help them get the word out about the Great Backyard Bird Count coming up this weekend, which if you think I was geeking out a little bit when they asked us to do that, you are right. Of course, we said duh. So here's the thing you need to know. Starting Friday and going through Monday, they are doing a global bird count where you download the Merlin app, which you should have already because I've talked about that enough on the show. And you go outside for like 15 minutes on one or all of those days and just count birds. Then you register them on the app. It's super easy. You do not have to be a professional birder or anything like that. So we're going to do it for the birds. It's going to be awesome. There is a link in the show notes with more details, but I'm going to be hyping this all week and doing my own bird counting with the kiddos this weekend. So anyway, that is officially on your radar. So get hyped. All right. So it is Monday, where every week this year we will be digging into a single less talked about crop in a series we're calling Planting and Raving. Today, the crop we're going to cover is spinach. Now, I did a whole video on spinach a few years back, and I've talked about spinach several times on this show, but why not put all of that info together in one nice compact place with a random question in the middle, because that's how we roll. Spinach is a great crop for basically every season, but the summer, unless you count Malabar spinach, that isn't really a spinach, or Tetragonia, which is also not a spinach, but very tasty, does really well in the summer, and both can make a okay substitute. So anyway, spinach though is extremely cold hardy, and in regions like mine, zone 6B, where, when the ice isn't on the ground for 2 weeks at a time, it will grow okay, even in the field unprotected, all winter, especially the Savoid varieties. They tend to have a lower concentration of moisture in their leaves, which makes the leaves less susceptible to freezing and exploding the cell walls. The same idea applies to kales and other brassicas like that. They're maybe a little bit more fibrous. They don't have as much moisture in the leaves, so they don't die as easily in the winter, thus making them better in general for winter production. There are also smooth spinaches and spinaches that just have a little bit of that Savoid look, which is kind of that crinkly thing I'm talking about. Sitting right in the middle of the two of, Savoid and smooth. Which one you grow, however, will depend a little bit or just entirely on your market and your goals. For baby spinach, for instance, sown very densely and cut when small after about 30 days or so, depending on the time of year and location, is generally the smooth, fast-growing spinaches like space spinach. This is what customers often expect and buy in the grocery store for like baby spinach, and is also generally not your overwintered type. Not saying it isn't cold hardy to some extent, but it's just not as hardy as the Savoid types. For leaf spinaches, slightly larger than baby leaf, any type of spinach can be used for that, but these do tend to be where you might employ more Savoid types. There are spinaches that are grown specifically as bunching spinach with taller stems, but I find honestly that most spinaches kind of do that. If you grow them for long enough, they will turn into a bunching capable spinach, meaning you put it in a bunch, almost like a kale or chard. You just cut the whole thing and then you band it. For marketing, spinach is relatively easy to sell through almost any outlet, though unless you are incredibly efficient at growing it, I would recommend avoiding large wholesalers, only because it's not an easy crop to grow efficiently at a profitable level and compete with larger growers out there, like out west, here in the US at least. They have giant fields of spinach with acres and acres of it and spinach harvesting machines, and will outcompete you on price all day long. That goes for a lot of crops, of course, but spinach is definitely high up there on that list. Farmers markets are an excellent place for this crop, with it selling for as much as $10 or $15 per pound, even in smaller markets, though I prefer to advertise it by units and not pounds because holy sticker shock with that one. Restaurants will often buy this crop in bulk at $7 to $10 a pound. It just depends on the restaurant, but it can be a little harder to get them to bite. I mean, not literally money-wise. With so much cheap spinach on the market, the taste of yours will be infinitely better by a long shot than what they can get from, like the classic box truck. So this is where bringing samples really shine. Bring a sample to them, let them try it, let them compare it. Also, make sure to communicate with restaurants on what type of spinach that they want, what the chef is looking for. Not all spinaches, for instance, are what the customer is expecting. For, like, say, a spinach salad, the Savoy types, to use that example, tend to be a little less tender for eating raw. So that's not always what people think of when they think of like a spinach salad. Speaking of taste, though, spinach that gets a little colder will have some of the best flavor of any crop grown here. It sweetens up nicely in the fall and winter if the timing is right. It's good in the spring, but as you approach summer, it's important to sort of just look for some slower bolting varieties. Now, I have not had great luck growing spinach over the summer or just like into the summer, just because we get pretty hot here pretty fast and we stay hot. So even with irrigation and misting and shade cloth and all the things, spinach is really just like, please just leave me here to die. But if anyone has any varieties that they like or that have worked for them over the summer in regions at least as warm as mine here in 6B, Kentucky, holler at us. I can give them a shot this summer and just see what I think. Otherwise, we will talk more on the growing side of things in the third segment. For now, though, let's take a quick break, and when we return, we'll look for grants to do this whole market gardening thing, spinach or not. BRB.
Hi, Jesse and the crew. Thank you so much for everything you teach us with no-till. I know you all are buried in snow and ice. This is the contrast. Colorado is having the worst winter, the driest winter on record. We're actually having to water our yard this first time in 40-some years. Thanks. Have a great day and enjoy your snow. It's very precious.
Today's episode is brought to you by Tend. Farming is hard, running it shouldn't be. Meet Tend, the purpose-built platform built by farmers for farmers. Plan your season, map your farm, and track every task from seed to sale. No more spreadsheets, no more guesswork, just smart, seamless workflows. Tend adapts to your farm, 1 acre or 100. Real-time inventory, sales, labor, tracking, traceability, and analytics all in one place. You grow food, flowers, fruit, and more. Tend helps you to grow smarter. Start free today at tend.com. That's TEND.com. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener or viewer, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Gerard Holodeck, who asks, quote, "Hey Jesse, do you think a segment on how to find/apply for federal or regional farm grants that makes sense for market gardeners would be possible? Are there any that you guys focus on? Thanks," end quote. All right, so great question here. And a couple years ago, I would have had a better picture of what grants were available, but obviously with the new administration, a lot has changed in the grant world. So forgive me if this segment feels a little incomplete, but I will also try my best to get you some good guidance and at very least point you in the direction of people who you should reach out to, because it is ultimately someone's job in your area to know what is available for you and how best to access it. First, I should say that on our farm, we don't really do a ton of grant funding, but we do a little bit here or there when it makes sense. The reason for that is that there's this perception, especially from people who aren't farmers or whatever, that grants are like free money, and they just aren't. More often than not, grants require a decent amount of paperwork, sometimes relinquishment of some percentage of control over a project, etc. In short, grants require some amount of labor, and for the most part, like we just, as farmers, don't have a ton of extra capacity hanging around ourselves. So we don't often apply for, a ton of grants. There are a few national grants that we have utilized over the years, however, and one I even mentioned in the live last week, which if you were there, shouts to you, which is the NRCS EQIP High Tunnel Grant. This particular grant helps pay for the construction of a high tunnel on your property and is among the easier grants to get. We used it on our old property, but have not used that grant on the new property, in part because although it can be great, it can also be a little bit slow. We just needed the tunnels that we have like earlier than the grant would have rewarded them based on when we applied. Otherwise, that's a great and helpful grant. And in your first year of building a farm, that's one of the first things you should do is just apply for that grant once you have your farm number. If I needed another tunnel, I would probably just go ahead and apply for it myself, in fact. And the NRCS does a lot of grants for everything from fencing to water collection to beneficial habitats and cover cropping, natural resource conservation. Shouts to them. For sure, go talk to them and see what might be helpful to you. Also, SARE, S-A-R-E, provides some grants that it's another one that our farm has not applied for, but we have been part of some other people's SARE grants, and No-Till Growers got a grant several years ago to do a series of videos through Southern SARE. There's like one for each region. I really love that grant system because you could be like, I really want to test different mulches on sandy soils or whatever. And you can design a sort of low-key research project around testing those mulches, and SARE will help fund it, like buy the mulch and pay for your labor and those sorts of things. Again, though, there is work on the front end and the back end, so you really have to want to do that part too. We are also going to be part of a new grant that used to be called something like Partnerships for Climate Smart Commodities, I think. But then that triggered some powerful people because, caring for the planet, the horror. But anyway, is now called something like the Advancing Markets for Producers AMP, something like that initiative. So we are going to be working with that project on our farm, and that seems pretty cool. Money to pour into some ecological projects around the farm to demonstrate the economic viability of caring for the planet. Sounds like a good Farmer Jesse-esque thing to be involved with. And we are connected to that grant through the Organic Association of Kentucky. So big shouts to Brooke and everybody over there. So anyway, those are just some of the things that come to mind. But what I would do in your case to find out what is available locally is go to your local organic ag organization first and just lay out what you're interested in and what you do on your farm and see if they might be able to tell you what is available locally. Also, hit up the Ag Extension Office and or FSA. I'm not sure what the equivalents of those would be in other countries, but people whose job it is to assist farmers are pretty much everywhere. So set up a meeting with them and or just like peruse the literature that they have. They will have a lot of resources. If any listeners have any other resources that they use, throw those in the comment section as well. Otherwise, I think that's the gist. We will take a quick break, and when we come back... Oh shoot, hold on, it's Popeye. Be right back. That's a fake phone.
Hello, Farmer Jesse. Peter, zone 6-ish, I guess, Maryland, just outside DC. Like everyone else, the garden is under snow, hoping for some relief. There's some kale, you can see that I'm hoping we'll make it, and over there as well. But like everywhere else, snow, snow, snow.
Today's episode is brought to you by Certified Naturally Grown. Certified Naturally Grown is the grassroots certification built by farmers for farmers. C&G gives local growers like you recognition for the commitment of producing food without synthetic chemicals by assuring customers that your practices are verified. C&G's peer review inspection model keeps the cost of certification low while creating opportunities for knowledge sharing amongst a strong, supportive network of like-minded farmers. Apply today to be certified before the season ramps up. Applications processed within 7 days. Learn more at naturallygrown.org. Today's episode is also brought to you by Peaceful Heritage Nursery. If you're looking for hardy and resilient fruit trees, berry plants, or pawpaw trees, then check out Peaceful Heritage Nursery. Peaceful Heritage Nursery LLC is a mail-order nursery shipping premium quality fruit trees and berry plants across the USA. They specialize in resilient, non-GMO plant genetics for small growers. Their diverse selection includes berries, cold hardy figs, passion fruits, gumi, mulberry, and much more. They're famous for their diverse selection of premium quality grafted pawpaw trees. 5-star Google ratings and customer testimonials attest to their commitment to excellence in quality and service. Find them at peacefulheritage.com and join the mailing list. Once again, find them at peacefulheritage.com. Use the promo code NOTILL for 10% off your first order. All right, back to the show. All right, so in the first segment, we talked kind of generally about spinach and marketing spinach and those sorts of things. So in this segment, let's discuss actually growing it. Spinach can be directly seeded or grown in trays and transplanted. And without question, the crop I get the most questions about in terms of germination, especially in the summer, is spinach. This is because unlike a lot of other crops, spinach likes its soil relatively cool, which makes its peak germination temperature closer to 65 degrees Fahrenheit, that's 18 Celsius, then 75 degrees Fahrenheit, 23 Celsius, like most other crops we grow. One thing we do to increase germination with spinach at any time of the year is we prime the seed. I've discussed priming before, but essentially priming is when you soak the seed overnight, usually in a compost extract for us, but could be nutrients, could be a mixture of things. Then drain it and dry it. You could even chill the seed after that in the summer to help it hit that cold period that it likes. But then after it's dry, you can store the seed or just use the seed straight away. The idea here is that it just gets the seed ready to germinate like it would in a natural setting where it is getting wet and drying, getting wet and drying out, like once it falls on the ground. Then when the temperatures are right, in nature, it's ready to outcompete the other crops. It just starts to germinate and grow. Most seeds you buy have not gone through this natural cycle, which is why priming works for almost any seed to speed it up and often increase germination rates. It will lower the seed's longevity, though, so only prime what you plan to use over the next few months. Like if you have spring brassicas and fall brassicas, you don't need to prime your fall brassicas at the same time you prime your spring ones. You can, you just don't need to. You're going to get better germination rates probably if you wait. All right, so for direct seeding, which is mostly how we do our spinach, we do a little mix of transplanting and direct seeding, but we do a lot of direct seeding. And when we do that, we sow spinach similar to how we sow radishes, often using the same plate or roller and the seeder, depending on what the shape and size of the seed is. For baby leaf, we will use the 4-row pinpoint seeder. That's a specialty seeder. You don't need it, but it will get those rows really, really tight. For regular leaf spinach, the Jang is our go-to. Then we will get the bed fully saturated and keep it that way for a week after sowing, often with row cover over top or in the late summer with a tarp over top, white side up, though this year we will be doing burlap trials as well to start moving that away from plastic. This is also a good crop for flame weeding. You wait just a few days and then you flame weed it because spinach is a little bit slow to germ. So flame after 3 days if you don't see any spinach, and then it should pop into a nice clean bed. You would really only transplant the spinach because it's such you'd have to transplant it so closely together. You would really only transplant it, one, if you're using something like the paper pot transplanter system, whole other story. We'll get to that another time. 2, if you wanted to use leaf or bunching spinach at a weird time of year. Or 3, if something was currently in the bed you wanted to use, but you wanted to get a jump on the spinach. What I mean by that last one is, let's say you have like peppers or something in a bed and you wanted to grow them until a frost, but ultimately wanted to get spinach into that bed for the wintertime. I may start the spinach in trays about 3 weeks ahead of the first hard frosts, and then that way when the peppers are done, I can clear the bed of the peppers and immediately get the spinach in there, and it will be a good chunk of the way to maturity before it ever, goes into the field. Or maybe it's like early spinach, but the field is, covered in snow or maybe ice. Starting the spinach in trays means I can get a 2 or 3 week jump on growing in the field and not have to wait for the, snow to melt, clean the bed, sow the spinach, and then wait for it to germ. That's the genius, I guess, of any greenhouse. It's kind of like your on deck garden. In trays, I usually place 3 to 5 seeds, give or take, and that way I get like these nice little clumps of spinach, and I space them around 7.5 inches apart on the grid for both leaf and bunching spinach. I usually use 128 cell equivalents, which are roughly 1 inch by 1 inch by 1 inch blocks when I'm doing the soil blocks. If you want to grow them bigger in the transplant trays, you just need bigger blocks. For harvest, I usually use a knife, just basic knife, and cut the whole cluster, but you could be more particular for certain customers and just pull individual leaves. For baby spinach, something like the Quick Cut Greens Harvester from Farmer's Friend can come in handy, but only if you're doing a lot of baby greens, because it is not a cheap tool. Worth it for baby greens production for sure, but start with a knife and see how many baby greens you can really grow before investing. After harvest, we will never soak the leaves of the spinach really, but if it's dirty at all, we will dunk it and then spin it dry. Too much time in the water really is that's the thing that we want to avoid because it seems to damage the spinach a little bit. So we usually just do a quick dunk, a spin dry, then pack it or store it in the walk-in in an airtight container. It's about a week-long storage crop, though we are often eating our spinach like 2 weeks after harvest without an issue. Just a week is like, I wouldn't want to sell it certainly after that. Disease-wise, downy mildew is often going to be your biggest issue. Airflow is huge, so make sure that in downy mildew-prone areas to give the spinach some shoulder room by planting them with more space between the rows, but also look for DMR, that's downy mildew-resistant varieties, if it's a problem on your land. Otherwise, in terms of profitability, it's a good one. I rank spinach right up there with like lettuce and other baby greens is quite profitable, but it's just a little bit harder to grow and harvest, so I'll give it like a 7 out of 10. in profitability because I've randomly decided to start ranking these crops on their profitability. Anyway, let us know what spinach varieties you all like and any approach or strategies that I missed. Otherwise, let's spin out of this Monday. It was okay. Don't forget, No Till Growers is now officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world. Also shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at notillgrowers.com just to support this work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of February, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Thomas Small. Shouts, Thomas. Thank you. Always love these new signups. So for this week's story, to reward new signups, we obviously need an up and coming Olympian. We'll call her Jessica, and her favorite sport is actually soccer, but the sport she really excels in and is, almost Olympic quality in is snowboarding. This is part because she lives deep in the mountains of Colorado, where sure there is some soccer around and a few people do some pickup indoors, but mostly life evolves around the ski slopes. And so anyway, Jessica's not just like good at snowboarding, she's like incredible at snowboarding. She's fearless, a generational talent. Some people call her. At 15, she wins adult competitions regularly in the state, and people say she's, gonna win the gold one day for the US. And anyway, one particular day, Jessica's on a ski trip, or a snowboarding trip really, deep into the mountains with her team when everything changes. And that is for tomorrow on The Mountains Will Have Their Say. I don't know what that means. We'll find out. Thanks for watching and or listening. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.